This particular sew-by-number pattern requires that we do some pre-piecing. Per our instructions, we want to piece together triangles and rectangles before we sew them onto the batting. It's a nice idea sometimes to lay out your fabrics directly on the batting so that you know exactly what it's going to look like before you start sewing. So I'm going to lay these out in the order that I want to make sure that it's going to look the way I'd like when it's finished. I have my fabrics laid out, and now I'm going to lay them together and pin them so that I can sew them. This requires that I have 4 triangles sewn to 4 rectangles. So we're going to take our pieces and, just like it illustrates in the instructions, we're going to put right sides together, the rectangle to the triangle. And we'll pin those together, and then using a 1/4 inch seam allowance, we're going to sew them all together. We've completed sewing 4 triangle rectangle units using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. 2 of these are going to fit in spaces 1 and 2. 2 of these we're going to join together for piece 3. Now after you finish sewing them together, you want to press those seams open. Now if you use starch before you cut your fabrics, you'll find that you have a very nice crisp seam here. Our triangle rectangle units have been pressed. Now I'm going to show you how they fit onto the batting. We're going to take the first piece, and this will be your piece 1 when you sew it onto your SewByNumber printed batting. So we'll take piece 1 will fit like that. Piece 2 will fit on like that. And then for piece 3, we're going to need to piece 2 of the units together. So we'll have that piece and that one. And for piece 3, it'll need to be sewn together. So we're going to place it right sides together and sew along this edge. We've now sewn 2 of our rectangle triangle units together to create piece 3, and we're going to press our seam so it's nice and flat. All of our pinwheel pattern pieces are now pre-sewn, so now we can sew them to our batting by number. We're going to start with piece 1. The solid blue lines are placement lines, not sewing lines. The dotted lines you'll find represent the stitching lines we had done with our pre-piecing. So we're going to place piece 1 right side up on our printed batting, aligning the edges of the fabric with the blue lines, and we're going to pin that lightly through the top layers to hold it in place. Then we're going to take our piece 2 and place it right sides together with piece 1, aligning it on the blue lines, and pin that to hold it in place. When stitching your SewByNumber projects, you want to make sure that you are using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Even though your presser foot may be called a 1/4 inch foot, you want to make sure it's actually a 1/4 inch. So lower your needle, and using a ruler, see where your needle lines up and where that 1/4 inch is on your machine. And then make sure that when you're stitching, you stay within that 1/4 inch. I've determined where the 1/4 inch marking is on my presser foot. So now I can sew pieces 1 and 2 together. We're going to start by back tacking to make sure that our layers stay secure. We've sewn pieces 1 and 2 together, so we'll remove our pins, flip this open, right sides up, and finger press the seam. Then we'll take pins and lightly pin through the batting to hold the layers in place, and then we'll add piece 3. So we'll flip this right sides together, and making sure that we're lined up on the blue lines, we'll pin piece 3 in place. Then using a 1/4 inch seam allowance, we'll stitch piece 3 to pieces 1 and 2. Piece 3 is now sewn to pieces 1 and 2, so we'll remove our pins and flip this right side up and finger press. At this point, we're going to actually press our pillow top so that it lays nice and flat. And I'm going to show you the back side so you can see how we've stitched through all the layers while sewing the pieces by number. Now, if you want, you can add additional quilt stitching to the top, or you can leave it as it is. The next thing we want to do is pin down all of our loose edges, because we're going to trim the back side using the lines that we had stitched on the outside edge. My top is pressed and pinned. Now we're going to flip it over to the back side and then cut just to the outside of our original stitching lines. When you're finished, you should have a 17-inch square. So you can use the scissors or a rotary cutter and trim out all 4 sides. Now that we've finished trimming our pillow top, we want to stitch it 1/8 of an inch to the inside of the outside edges, just to make sure that all of our pieces stay in place. The outside edges of our pillow top have been stitched to hold all the layers in place. Now we can go on to create the rest of the pillow cover.